is
when
bonkers
Benchmade is
when
your
you're saying that
budget
a
alternative,
Benchmade
you've gone
is
too far.
of value compared to what you're releasing over at Leatherman.
Sorry about the little sound bite. The reason I included it into the intro and the reason I'm actually shooting this video is the amount of righteous indignation that suddenly popped up in our community and permeates YouTube waves, emanating from a very well-respected outdoors gear and knife reviewers. So I figured, I live 40 minutes from the knife center, why not take a quick run, grab one of the knives in question, and open it in front of your eyes, and then form my unbiased, or as unbiased as humanly possible, opinion while addressing all the points that emanate from these prominent reviewers. Here's the receipt. As you can see, it's today's date, a day after the knife was released, and I paid the full retail price and taxes, ending up being $315.85. So at this point, I'm going to ask you to give me a like in advance for the initiative. Thank you. Here's the nice little box from Leatherman, and the model I chose was Blazer Stainless. As you can see, the box is fully sealed on both sides. Why did I choose the model that is stainless without Cerakote? For the simple reason, here's a Cerakoted multi-bit driver that I use from Hodo, and this is the work-sharp knife that I've been carrying and using it in a tool capacity. And as you can see, Cerakote doesn't last in my pocket. Very interesting finish on the handle, feels like some kind of tree bark. It's probably roughed up to accommodate Cerakote more effectively. The edges of the handle are belt satin finished all the way around. The blade is almost centered. There's no play in a close position. Interesting. Hollow grind, unusual thumb protrusions, thumb studs. It's thundering outside, so I can lose light at any moment here. Is this the back side of the button? Let's see. Yeah, of course. And it comes out when you push the button, the back side of it comes out on the other side on the opposite scale and butts against your index finger. So it's kind of strange. And the action is super tight. I can flick it open, but there's no motion in the ocean. I have to use two hands or my thumb to close it. Let's try it a couple more times here. It's almost like it does not flip close at all. Maybe the pivot is too tight. Let's loosen it maybe an eighth of a turn, quarter turn. Now I have a little bit of a play. And let's see if I can open it and let it drop. Nope. So there's a detent, and to break that detent, no amount of loosening the pivot helps. You have to press the button super hard while remembering to keep your index finger out of the way. And guys, I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep the straight face. This is total shit. I'm not a big knife flipper, but I'm sorry that the whole shtick behind these button-operated liner locks or pinch locks or compression locks is to have a drop shot action. The funny part, they're patenting this locking mechanism as if anybody in their right mind would be trying to replicate it. I mean, guys, you're safe. Maybe hire a Chinese consultant or something. I feel like maybe somebody at Leatherman didn't do their homework. So the reason a compression lock was invented is to give folks a very finger-safe operating system on the knife. So when you go to close the knife, look at where my fingers are, know where in the blade's path, and it drops shot, or I can swing it shot. And then Spyderco had this smock knife design. This is a button-operated compression lock or something like that. Okay, so also a drop shot action, very flickable, reverse flickable, thumb flickable, and even has a front flipper. And then drop shot with my fingers nowhere near the edge. And here are two Vastids. They came up with their own version, slightly different from these two guys. And theirs is also dropping shot. So the idea is you can fidget with it, and then you can safely close it without putting your fingers in the way. Here's another Vastid. This is raccoon, porcupine, smock, and sage 5. So how does the Blazer compare to these knives? You can't drop it shot, so you have to reposition your hand, and now you need to mind where your fingers are to drive the blade home. But there's no way for me to shot it. So again, moving my fingers puts them in the path of the blade. So I should just stop it here. I do want to test the hardness of the blade and maybe figure something out. As they say, the devil is in the detail, and I want to know what the devil did they design here. All right, look at the size of this washer. This comes out easily, and the button just pops right out, and there's the leaf spring. Yeah, it's definitely different from the compression lock or pinch lock or top liner button operated lock. I'll still have to figure out how the pieces go together, and I will do a segment on that later in the video. If you're bored by all this, just skip toward the end of the video where the hardness test is. It's supposed to be in the range of 60 to 63. And how do I know about the range? Well, of course, these guys told me.
Claimed HRC of 60 to 63. That is a 3-point margin that we rarely see in most blades.
All right, folks at Leatherman, you made a knife in the high-end, high-price category. Nowhere does the saying perception is reality rings true more than in the knife community. I don't think a regular person can easily detect the difference between 60 and 63 HRC hardness on a blade. The perception is that it matters a heck of a lot. I don't know why. I think folks that are into knives, they used to sharpening their blades to a certain angle, and that's where the delta in 1, 2, 3 points in hardness can play the role. And we are, as a community, too stubborn to not do 15 degrees angles where softer steels don't necessarily shine. But I'm going to get a lot of flack for this comment, but that's my belief, and it's my perception. What Leatherman decision makers need to understand, if they peg you as steel being too soft or not trying to meet that overwhelming demand for higher hardness MagnaCut, you're toast. You are relegated to selling these knives as gift items to people who have no idea about knives. They might know a lot about multi-tools and other things that are actually useful, but knife community, and you're pricing it at a collector's level. Anyway, you see the conflict there. I think that's what these guys trying to tell you in their videos. Normally, I don't like pocket clips that protrude beyond the confines of the back of the handle, for the simple reason if I drop the knife on a hard surface, it can bend the clip. This one is very robust though. Here it is compared to the Spyderco wire clip. I estimate twice the cross section. Before we do the hardness test, I'd like to say this. I had no plans to buy this knife. This knife just dropped out of the blue, and I spent $315 just so that I can address the hype that surrounds it. And I don't mean positive hype. This time is negative. I'm just against any type of hype. Let's have a reasonable discussion based on test and communal knowledge here. If you are watching my channel for the first time, I do this a lot. And it's important to me that you understand that I do not sell knives. There's zero profit in me bashing this knife or elevating and telling you how great it is. It is what it is, data. So if you're not a subscriber, I'd appreciate the subscribe. As you're watching the test, I'll explain to you what's going on the screen. The segment is uninterrupted so that you know I didn't edit it in any way. What you see is what you get. So let's get into it. Because blade hardness is so important to most of the knife enthusiasts, I start every test with showing you the certificate that I obtained for my calibration block. It is NIST, National Institute of Standards and Tests, certified block, and it's serialized to the certificate. It is calibrated to be at 61.99 or 62 HRC. As you can see, I started accelerating the video for your time's sake because these tests, each poke test, takes about 20 to 30 seconds. First steps are preloading the test subject and setting the 0, and then the major load pushes the anvil with the test subject toward the indenter. I get 62 spot on as per calibrated test block. And now I'm ready to put the blade on the anvil. Normally I do 3 pokes and give you the average. Today I'm going to do 4. And while we're going through the motions, I would like to tell you how the hardness is specified in technical documentation so that everybody understands what 60 to 63 range actually means. And we got our first result, which is 61.6 HRC. There is an international standard for this type of test, designated ASTM E-18. And in that document, it specifies what are the acceptable tolerances for the Rockwell testers. I apologize in advance for getting a little bit technical here. And here's our second result, coming at 61.5. In accordance with ASTM E-18, in this hardness range, a test device is allowed to have an error of plus or minus 1 HRC and repeatability of plus or minus half a point of HRC. And now the third test result looks like 61.5 or maybe even 0.6 again. Recently I learned from unequivocal experts in the hardness testing that I was overinterpreting the ASTM. The tolerance for the device is not actually the sum of the error and the repeatability. It's not 1.5 HRC plus or minus. It is actually plus or minus 1 HRC, and within that range you are not allowed to differentiate from test to test by more than half a point. And this last one, I was as close to the cutting edge as I could get on the flat of the blade, is 61.6 again. So now I'm going to do something I don't normally do and retest the calibration block to make sure nothing shifted while I was testing. I'm going to venture that whoever published the 60 to 63 range was interpreting the ASTM the way I used to. And my calibration block tested at 61.8 HRC. Clearly I'm within the tolerance and it's time to celebrate. Time to reassemble the knife. First we place the washer onto the pivot barrel. Then we insert the back of the spring in a recess on the boss that holds it in place, and then drop it so that the hole lines up with the stud that's milled into the handle. The button block is slippery, be careful. Orient the cylindrical portion toward the spine or back of the handle, and then drop it in so the oblong section lines up with the slot. You will be pressing down on the spring while dropping it in. Now we're ready to put the blade on. As soon as you put the blade on, the button will not jump out, but I prefer to still have it secured in place. The second washer goes on now. Grab the other half of the handle. It's a little bit awkward, so I'm going to let go of this button. I know it's not going anywhere. Button is the highest protrusion, so you first line up that hole and then line the pivot barrel and wait for the clicks. Now it's all in one piece and you can actually let go. Get the pivot screw started. You don't have to screw it all the way in. And now we'll deal with the pocket clip. You don't have to insert the clip into the holes on the pommel of the handle. You can start the screw, just don't tighten it all the way. Now grab the pocket clip and insert it if you're righty on the side without the screw. And if you are a lefty, you can put it on the side with a screw. The screw is not interfering with the clip at all. Either way, it works great. Nicely designed feature here. And now you can torque the screw. It's a T8, so you can go about 18 to 22 inch-pounds of torque, and it will hold the clip in nice and secure. Tighten the pivot all the way and then back it off maybe just a sixth of a turn, which happens to be the spacing between the teeth on the T8 Torx bit. Make sure the blade has no play. Check everything for function. If you lined up everything correctly, there should be no play in the button and the blade will deploy smoothly, if not easily. It actually centered better after disassembly, don't know why, but it's looking good to me, or as good as it can possibly be. While shooting this video, I had to refresh my memory regarding the 416 stainless steel that this handle is made out of, and to do that I watched the video by this expert.
Michael Talks Metal, back again. Today, our video will introduce another stainless steel found in specifications for aerospace applications. Two variants of Type 416 exist.
I'll throw the link to the full-length video in the description. For now, I just wanted some excerpts that tell you the most important things from the knife enthusiast perspective.
Typical applications require some strength and hardness, but where the limited corrosion resistance of these 12% chromium alloys is adequate. The machinability rating is 110%, and again, that is against alloy 1212.
So let's sum this up. Looks and feel, definitely premium. Function, definitely not. From a technical standpoint, the design has some very interesting and original solutions. For example, the button mechanism is unlike anything I've seen in this type of locks. And I actually grew to like how the pocket clip is treated and inserted. Knife is very easy to disassemble and reassemble, so maintainability is high. And I don't know if you gathered from Mike's passage there, the machinability of this handle is very high, so that should reduce production costs. Same goes for MagnaCut, by the way. It is a very well machinable steel when it's not heat treated to its high hardness. Corrosion resistant, mixed results. So the handle is not very corrosion resistant, especially if you compare it to titanium. That fact puzzles me because design needs to be balanced, and putting one of the most corrosion resistant steels in the market into the handle that is made out of one of the least corrosion resistant stainless steels in the market, it's contradictory. Here's a disclaimer. All the tests and evaluations that you've seen today are related to this knife. Not the one you bought, not the ones that are available online. It's this specific knife that I was testing. So your results may vary when you get yours, if you get yours. It is important for me to say that testing one sample out of a batch is not an industry standard method. And even though I'm using an industry standard tool to measure the hardness, it does not characterize the entire production run. It can be higher, it can be lower, within the specified range. While we're looking at the edge under the microscope, I'd like to share this thought with you. I'm pretty sure they were trying to hit 61.5, but somebody told them about the tolerance erroneously being plus or minus 1.5, and that's why they specified 60 to 63. And here's something you know who's going to complain about. The sharpening choil blend line is too far into the blade, creating a smiley face. And the rest of the sharpening is mediocre. Maybe Benchmade level, maybe slightly better. By all indications, this knife should have been in a $89 to $119 price category. Not because I wanted it to be there, but because it's literally the least expensive handle material, combined with the optimized manufacturability, very limited hand labor, and the only expensive part to that is the blade, which can't be more than $60 by itself. How do I know? I had to replace a blade on my Malibu, and that's what they charged me for MagnaCut blade. Completed, sharpened. Well, I bought it deliberately for the purpose of this test, and I wanted to give it a fair shake, and now I am kind of leaning toward the same bias that other reviewers already stated. So, nice first try. See you soon with a better knife. Yeah.